Alright, in this video we are going to go over um, our graphs that we need to know for our CBA this week. So I'm going to do most of the questions in each section, but maybe not finish every single section. But I'll give you enough to work on, that way you'll know you're on the right track. Alright, so for this first section we are dealing with a stem and leaf. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to skip number 1 and do number 2 and number 3, because that will help us do number 6 and number 7, and then I'm going to skip down and do number 6. So that way you'll at least kind of have a starting point for those. So I'm going to skip number 1. The biggest thing we need to remember is that for this particular stem, and it tells us down here at the bottom that 4/6 is 4.6, and so remember that this is the ones place with our stem, and our leaves are in the tenths place. All right, so for number 2, what are the data points for the stem of 5? So we're looking here at 5. So we're going to have 5.4, 5.5, and 5.9. So we've got these 3 leaves, so we should have 3 numbers. All right, our ones place and our tenths, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.9. Okay. Let's do the same thing for number 3, except we're going to be looking at the 6 stem. So we've got 6.0, 6.1, 6.3, 6.6, 6.7, and 6.8. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leaves, so I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. Okay, good. All right, now we're going to skip down to number 6 because it's a little bit different question. Once you get to this point in number 6, and you will have done number 1 and number 4 and number 5 hopefully by this point, you'll see that the question is worded a little bit differently. So I want to know the total value of all the data points for stem 5. All right, so what we did up here was all the different data points. So we have our data points for stem 5, but it's asking us for the total value of all those data points. All right, so if I want the total value, then I'm going to add all of those up. So off to the side, I'm going to have 5.9 plus 5.4 and 5.5. And I'm just going to add the 3 of those up. All right, so 9 plus 5 gives me 14, plus 4 more gives me 18, carry my 1. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 5 is 11, plus 5 is 16. Now remember, when you're doing this, you have to line up your decimals when you're adding or subtracting. All right, so my answer for number 6 would be 16 and 8/10. We're going to do something similar on question number 7 and number 8. And for questions 7 and 8, I need the data points for the stem of 6, which we got on number 3. And on number 8, we're going to need data points for the stem of 7, which you will do on number 4. All right, let's go to the next section. So the next section is on stem and leaf again. This time, though, a little bit more challenging set of questions, because we've got a different stem and leaf. We've got a lot more leaves, too, so that's going to make it even more challenging. And we need to look at this. What is this total weight? And that looks like how each question is going to start. What is the total weight of? So when we see total weight of, we know we're probably going to be adding some things, because if we see total weight, then we're probably going to be adding some things up. So what is the total weight of all the toys that are less than 1 kilogram? Now, when we're doing this, we may not necessarily have to get every single stem, every single leaf for every single stem, but we might. So one strategy could be that off to the side you actually write these out, but man, that's going to be a lot of writing. So we'll probably want to just do this one at a time. So let's start with number 9. Total weight of all toys that are less than 1 kilogram. All right, so if it's less than 1, and remember, again, we're dealing with decimals here. So we're really only talking about this set of leaves right here. We want the sum of this set right here. Well, we've got 0.2, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.8, and 0.9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. I'm going to erase this line a little bit, move it up so you can see my 4 clearly. So I need to add all of these up now. I need to sum all these up. So what I'm going to do, I don't want to do them all together because I'm worried I might make a computation error. And I know how much you guys love to catch me when I make a computation error. You love to give me a hard time about that. So I'm going to do them in sets of 3. I've already kind of written them that way, so I'm just going to do them in sets of 3, and then I'll add those 3 numbers up when I get done. So we've got 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7. Remember, we need to keep our decimals lined up for all this addition. We got 4 plus 6 is 10, plus 1 is 17. Excuse me, plus 7 is 17. Carry my 1. These are all zeros. I got a 1 at the top. So I'm going to get 1.7. 8 and 8 is 16. 16 plus 9 is 25. Carrying my 2. My 2 is the only thing on here because it's all zeros. Remember, keep those decimals lined up when we're adding or subtracting decimals. Now I need to add these 3 up. So I've got 2.5, 1.7, and 0.7. All right, so 5 plus 7 gives me 12, plus 7 more gives me 19. Carry my 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 1 more is 4. So my answer is 4.9. All right, give me a second here off to the side. I'm going to check my computation. That way nobody leaves me any comments like, Mr. Beckwith, you missed number whatever because you didn't add right. Just know how much you guys love to catch me on those. All right, looks like we're good on that one. And so that's what we're going to do on each of these. So number 10, greater than 4. So I'm just looking at the leaves for this 4 stem. Number 11 is going to be a little bit more intense though, because I want to know the total weight of all toys between 1 kilogram and 3 kilograms. So I need, basically what they're asking for here is it's got to be greater than 1. It's got to be greater than 1, but it's got to be less than 3. So it's got to be greater than 1 and less than 3. I'm going to be looking at all the leaves in stem number 1 and all the leaves in stem number 2. Because I don't need number 3. I don't need these leaves because it's less than 3. So I'm not worried about the 3 leaves. And I'm not worried about the 0 leaves because I need them to be greater than 1. So read these questions carefully. There's going to be a fair amount of computation on this. You probably want to double check your answers. And I'm totally okay with you using a calculator to double check. Just make sure you set up the problem and show your work the first time. Check with the calculator after you've solved the problem. Remember, your phone or your calculator is not going to be what's taking your test this week. All right, let's go on to the next section. So frequency table along with a dot plot. So we've got the dot plot, but then we have to complete the frequency table. Now the challenge with this one is we're going from fractions on the minutes, so fractions of hours. So we've got 1/4 hours here, 1/2 hour, 3/4 hour. So we've got to know that 1/4 of an hour, we've got to know how many minutes that is. Now, if you don't know, most people know that what 1/4 hour is, excuse me. But if you don't know, then one thing you can do is you can actually multiply it out. So if I say, okay, there's 60 minutes in an hour. So if I multiply 1/4 times 60, I'm going to get 60 over 4. And we know this is a division problem in disguise. So when I've got an improper fraction, I'm just going to do the division. 4 goes into 6 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. Pull down my 0 there. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20, so we get no remainder. And so we end up with 15 minutes. So 1/4 of an hour is 15 minutes. So I know that this goes here. This, we know half an hour is 30 minutes, and 3/4 must be 45. And we know 1 hour is 60 minutes. So the frequency table doesn't really even ask me about the zeros. So I don't need those students, I believe, that did 0 hours of homework. So shame on those guys. If you're watching this at home, hey, you wouldn't fall into this category. So now we're just counting dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, counting dots, I always lose my place because I get distracted by things. So it's not a bad idea to go back through and just double count. Just double check, just make sure you got it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we're good. So that's our frequency table. Now, the rest of these questions are going to ask us to really focus on the dot plot and not so much on the frequency table. We could use the frequency table, but it's probably a better idea for us to use the dot plot and just label the dots to make it a little easier. I'm going to go and label the 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because we're going to be asked to set up some fractions. All right, now this will help us remember what goes with what, depending on if we're asked for the fraction of an hour or if we're asked for the minutes. So number 16 says, what fraction of students studied for half an hour less? So it's asking me for the fraction, and it asked me for the fraction on number 17 and number 18 as well. So it's asking me to give an answer in a fraction. Now, if we recall, when we're dealing with dot plots, if we're asked for a fraction as an answer, then our denominator is going to be whatever the total number of dots are, because the total number of dots represents the total number of students. All right, and so everything we're going to give for 16, 17, and 18 is going to be some number in the numerator spot out of however many total students. So we need the total students. All right, so we've got 7 plus 5 is 12, plus 1 is 13, plus 7 more is 20, plus 8 is 28. So my denominator on 16, 17, and 18 is going to be out of 28. So 28 is my denominator. Now, I may simplify these fractions because I don't know what the numerators will be on these yet, but my starting point is always going to be with 28 in the denominator. All right, so let's look at number 16. What fraction of students studied for half an hour or less? So here's my half an hour spot, but it's also asking me for those that studied for less than half an hour. So if they studied for half an hour or less would be 15 minutes, or 0, because 0 is less than 30 minutes or half an hour. So I'm just going to count these up. So I've got 7 plus 5 gives me 12, plus 1 more gives me 13. Now the good news for us is, because 13 is a prime number, and 28 cannot be divided by 13, we're done. We've got our answer. 13 out of 28 students studied for half an hour or less. All right, so there's my answer right there, 13 out of 28. All right, number 17, excuse me. What fraction of students studied for an hour? So now we're just looking at one time. They studied for an hour. So we go up here. Here's my 1 hour spot. We've got 8 students. Again, not a bad idea to recount the dots just to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so we get 8 out of 28. Ooh. Because 8 and 28 are even numbers, I know I can always divide by 2. So, because I need to simplify this now. 8's not prime, 28's not prime, and I know I can divide both numbers by the same factor. So I could divide by 2, But if I look a little closer and think, okay, what about 3? No, that won't work. What about 4? Well, I know 4 will divide into 8, and 4 will also divide into 28. So let's divide by 4, top and bottom, just to save us a step. So 8 divided by 4 gives me 2, and 28 divided by 4 gives me 7. So I end up with 2 sevenths as my answer. All right, number 18. How many students studied for 45 minutes? Well, there's 7 students. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 becomes my numerator. 7's prime. So now I have to decide, how can I simplify this? 7 is prime, so will 28 divide by 7? If the answer is yes, I can simplify it. If the answer is no, I can't. Well, the answer is yes, so I can divide top and bottom by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 28 divided by 7 is 4. So I get 1/4 as my answer. The last 2 questions are going to ask me to calculate a couple of things, and I may even be doing some addition and subtraction with some decimals, or excuse me, with some fractions. So let's take a look. How many more students were there? How many more? So that should be sending off alarms that we're probably going to be subtracting. How many more students were there that studied for half an hour or more? So this is all one thing, half an hour or more. And I may even write 30 minutes or more, just to make a note on that. How many more students were there that studied for half an hour more than studied for less than half an hour? Okay, so this is 30 minutes or more, and this is less than 30 minutes. So I'm really comparing all this. Like, I'm going to have all of them in here. So because they either studied for 30 minutes or more, or they studied for less than 30 minutes. They're going to all 28 students are going to fall into that category. So let's first get this number, half an hour or more. Let's go back up to my dot plot, and I could look at my frequency table for this too. For this first part, it won't help me on the second part though. So we got 1 plus 7 gives me 8, plus 8 more gives me 16. So these are all the students that studied for half an hour or more. I've got 16 students here. All right. So actually, I'm going to write it right here, 16. Now, for those students that studied for less than half an hour, so we're on to the second part for this less than half an hour. So I'm going to use my pencil just kind of as a divider. I did that a second ago because I like to visually see the two parts. So here's my 30-minute mark. I want to know the students that were less than 30 minutes. So I've got 5 and 7 more, so that gives me 12. So we've got 12 students that studied for less than 30 minutes, 16 that studied for 30 minutes or more. That is 28, which is how many total students I have, so I got them all in there. And now I'm just going to subtract 16 minus 12, which gives me 4. And that's my answer. All right, number 20. How many more, ooh, there's that how many more again, so we're probably going to be subtracting, students were there that studied, then did not study? So what does that mean? Because there's no numbers in there. There's no minutes, there's no quarter hours, there's no numbers in there. How many more students were there that studied than did not study? Well, if they did not study, how many minutes did they spend? Well, that'd be 0, right? 0 minutes. And if they did study, well, wouldn't that mean that any time spent at all was studying? So really what I'm looking at, how many didn't study and how many studied? Whether they studied for 15 minutes or all the way up to an hour. They studied some. So those are the two groups that I'm looking at. So for 0 minutes, we've got 7 students. For those students that did study, any at all, we've got 5, plus 1 is 6, plus 7 is 13, plus 8 is 21. So I've got 21 students that studied. Now, quick check. 21 and 7 gives me 28. Well, that's the total number of students I have. So I got them all. I didn't miscount. And now I'm just going to do my subtraction problem. 21 minus 7, which is going to give me 14. And that answers my question. 14 more students studied than did not study. There we go. All finished with that section. All right, on to the final section, our scatter plots. Now, I am not going to do all these points with you because you guys are more than capable of doing this on your own, but I will do the first one with you. The thing I want you to pay close attention to is where the labels are and how the function table is set up. So, because we've got two different sets of function tables here. We've got an hours and days, and we're not really given information on what these even are. We've got hours and days on these first two. These bottom three, we've got snow cones, sales, so that kind of tells us numbers sold and then what the temperature was. So we're given a little information, but we really don't need it to plot these points. All we really need to recognize is, what's my x-axis label? Well, my x-axis label is days, so that's my x-axis. So when I look up here, this is going to be my x. My y-axis is hours, so that's going to be my y-axis. So on here, on my function table, there's my y. And now I'm just plotting points. And it actually doesn't even really matter what order I go in on a scatter plot. Now I'm going to just kind of naturally start here at the origin and work my way out. So I'll start here at 1, and do I have any points on 1? And I do. I've got a point at 1, 9. So on day 1, 9 hours. Again, I don't even know what this is. I'm just plotting points on this scatter plot, or I'm getting the coordinates for the points that are plotted. Then we've got 2, 3, 3, 2, 4, 6, nothing on 5, 6, 6, 8, 4, 9, 5, 10, 2. And there we go. And that's what we need to do for each of those. Now, it wouldn't have hurt anything if I'd maybe put a little mark on these every time I plotted them. That wouldn't have hurt anything at all. But this is just plotting points on our coordinate plane, which we've done several times before. We're just doing it on our scatter plot this time. I'm going to let you guys finish that up on your own. All right. Work hard. Do good. If you have questions, ask me when you see me tomorrow morning. You guys do a good job.